You're listening to QCast, presented by Qcella Media. Please consider giving generously to Qcella's nonprofit mission. To find out more about our mission and to make a donation, visit our website at qcast.qcella.org. Your tax-deductible donation will help us continue bringing you quality podcasts just like this one.
I may be bruised, but I'm not broken. You can't take away my soul. You tried to tell me I don't count, but I know in my heart that's not true. So you cannot take me down that path. I'll make it without you. I may be bruised, but I'm not broken. My life counts for something, and you wake up and I'll be gone. You'll know that you were wrong.
Welcome to my show, Shades of Gender. I'm your host, Terry Ryan. Each week, we're going to be talking about gender identity, including transgender, crossdressers, gender fluid, and non-binary gender individuals who self-identify with these groups. The definitions of these groups are often misused and certainly misunderstood. So our goal is to identify these groups, listen to their stories and their journeys in life to get a better understanding of who they are and how they're doing in society. So I'm really pleased to be in season 2 of Shades of Gender and honored to be here in, as I call this, a movement, because I really believe that this is gender identity is the last taboo of our society, and there's so many labels out there that are older labels that people have used that they don't like anymore, and so this is why we do the show. And you know, I'm very happy today to have Syndey Lovekiss. Hi, Syndey.
Hello, Terry.
Hello, and she is in the studio.
Thank you for inviting me.
Well, you know, it's fabulous to have her. She just drove in from LA area, so that is really a gift in itself. I mean, to have a guest, anyone who's from Southern California on the 91 knows that anyone who comes in to see me in Palm Springs from LA area is really, wants to be here, and I really do thank you.
Oh, you're welcome.
Because, you know,
it was slower than I thought.
Oh, yeah.
Here, so.
I bet, yeah. It could be 2 hours or it could be 5. I mean, you know, so anyway, welcome. And so Syndey is someone that I actually do not know that I've spoken to on the phone and was referred into me. And so we're really going to start, you know, kind of from scratch with you. And because it's a radio show, and they can't see you, and you know, she's a pretty woman, blonde hair, you know, slim, about 5'7", and it's just a wonderful smile and demeanor. But
thank you.
You do. So we don't see you, so they don't know. So I that's your visual. So, you know, I need to start so our audience knows, you know, I say I don't like labels, and yet then I label because it's really, it seems like you almost have to redefine it to unravel it. Okay. And that's what we're doing. So where do you self-identify in the gender scale?
I think of myself as trans feminine, which is
a new one.
Actually a term I didn't even know what it meant until maybe a year ago.
There's a new one for me. I love it.
When I heard it, I was like, oh,
okay.
yeah, that sounds like me.
Right. And what does that
What that means is it's not that I can't identify or relate to being a man at all. Mm-hmm. I just identify more strongly with female things.
Okay.
And not so much to where I feel like I'm not a man at all.
Right.
But even when I'm in male mode, I feel very feminine all the time.
You do. And so here's a question that, you know, I go way back on this because I'm starting to see some patterns kind of early on in this trans space. Certainly in the crossdressers when I worked with them, you know, it was early dressing up, more so actually for the crossdressers I find than, and a lot of the gender fluid early on, but not necessarily identifying really feminine or more toward the femme side. It was more about the action and you know, maybe part of it, but with yourself, then did you, as you describe yourself as trans feminine, did you start not only self-identifying, but really when you looked in the mirror, did you see a woman or a little girl?
Not when I was younger, if that's what you mean.
Yeah,
No.
yeah. So when you were younger, what was your experience? Did you cross dress? Did you feel any femoral, or was this something?
When I was
later?
little, I played with typical boys' toys until my little sister got old enough to where her toys were no longer baby toys. And then I would start going into her room and playing with her toys too. And she had...
You just like toys.
She had this... Well, we're talking like 7.
Yeah.
Maybe 7 years old. She had this really pretty room. She had one of those 4-poster beds with a lace canopy on it and lace bedspread and dolls surrounding the whole room, really fancy ones, and a little toy kitchen and all this stuff. And I wasn't allowed in there, but I'd always go in there anyway when no one was home. I was kind of a latchkey kid, so I was home alone a lot. And I don't know, I'd put on some of her clothes, like her little ballerina clothes. And
Oh, you did?
yeah, I put those on.
So you really had a fascination, like you loved with her stuff,
I'd
right?
put her little clips in my hair. She had little bows and things. I thought they were pretty. And honestly, a lot of the times I wouldn't put her clothes on. I would just play with her toys and just be in her room sitting there. And so growing up, I would say in my house, there wasn't really very clear gender roles necessarily. I had a single mom, but I don't know. I didn't feel so much like a little girl or like a woman as much as I always just felt very feminine.
Right. So you were which is interesting because that seems like it makes sense because, when you're 7 years old, that's a child brain thinking at things differently. You're discovering the world and what you're attracted to. And, you don't really, we forget, when I talk about these labels and things now, it's spoken from an adult mind and experience, not from a child. So in a child, but there's trends, but it's more of how a child does something. So you really, were attracted to or felt comfortable in that pretty room with that pretty bed with the girl things.
Oh, I loved it. It was my favorite room.
Yeah. So, instead of being, with Batman and not that you maybe, like you said, you didn't like it, but this is something that really you felt really comfortable in. So.
Oh, yeah. I remember getting into an argument with my mother at that time about why is my room not as nice as her room? And she was like, what are you talking about? Your room is really nice. I just spent like a whole weekend fixing it up and I painted it and did all this stuff. And I didn't really realize it, but it was really nice. Yeah. It's just her room was really girly and I liked it more.
So she had no idea. She's thinking, I don't know, you have a great room too. So I want to go back to the word trans feminine. Because it is new to me, and gender fluid is obviously out there. There's non-conforming gender identity. There's cross-dressing. There's new bigender. So the trans feminine, would you say it's closer to a dual gender, or not dual, gender fluid?
Yeah, I would say it's kind of a bigender, gender fluid kind of a thing.
Yeah, in that space.
But leaning more into the feminine.
Into the feminine,
Into
right.
the feminine side.
Right, so not disliking your male role. But this is another thing. Do you feel that, and I will talk more about your personal relationship with your family and your kids, but if you could and you had you could do this without a whole lot of loss, do you see yourself shifting more toward living, your life as a woman?
I don't see that happening now, but honestly, I think I could go what we'd call full time and be very happy in that. But what I wouldn't be happy with is, I don't know how my kids would take that. I know my wife wouldn't be
with you, probably
wouldn't be done with that. Yeah,
Right.
She'd probably understand, but
yeah, she'd probably still be your friend, but it's changing the relationship.
Yeah, she's told me very plainly, I don't want to be married to a woman.
Right. Well, she can't be more plain.
Yeah.
And fair enough, because did you talk to her about your femme side before you got married, or was it just
Not really. Not... it wasn't like it was a secret that I had kind of a lot of a feminine side, but I think she just thought of me like I did. I just thought of myself as a very feminine guy. And I wasn't necessarily effeminate. I just had lots of feminine interests and not lots of male ones. And maybe that's why we got along so well.
Right. Well, that's what I'm saying. It's hard to, we are people, right? We're not like rocks, where we can put them safely in a box, right? So we have different parts of us that are female and male and different interests, like I've always liked Porsches, and they said, well, that's a man's car. And I said, yeah, but that's my car if I could
Yeah.
afford it. I mean, I like fast sports cars. And they say,
yeah.
well, and you're tailored. Yeah, but it doesn't mean that I necessarily want to live my life as a man, But I've worked in a lot of male industries. So, it is interesting how, we are hybrids of things. But back to your wife. So you've been married how long?
20 years.
Okay, so a long time. And how old are your children now?
The oldest is 18. He's a senior in high school. And then the two others are 10. He's a boy, and 8 is my little girl.
Okay. Oh, so pretty young still.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, they're really
young. They're really young. So they're, this is their formative years. So we have, as you're going to school, as you say, and, as, well, we'll get to that too, but as you're going back to school in your femme self, how are you balancing all of this, with your kids? Your wife's already told you, like, I'm your friend and this is okay, but, baby steps in what's happening. But how is this all working for you?
Well, I mean, it's not so much difficult because of the feminineness. I mean, I am going back to school as Syndey. I wanted to do something with this more than shopping and
Yes,
clubbing and things like that.
Well, it's kind of like your outlet too for your femme self, right? To be able, or your feminine part of you, which is, it's not a separate. You're not like separate people. You're one person. But.
Yeah, I wanted to start doing more just normal life things, and so it's really not so much the Syndey of it. It's just going back to school is a lot of work and it's hard. And I mean, my wife is in school too, so she understands.
So you're both going back to college?
Yeah, but she's been in college for a while.
Okay,
It's
and
just me
what are you
that's
studying, and what's your full-time profession as a? Have you made your
I'm
money?
studying psychology, which is what I was originally studying years ago. I'm 48, and I graduated.
sidetracked,
I
like all of us
graduated in
do.
'98 with a business degree from Pepperdine. But originally, I was studying psychology, and my company offered to pay for my tuition if I studied business. So I switched, but I've always had an interest in psychology, and I realized if I don't have that many more units before I can finish an AA in psychology, and all my classes from back in those days still transfer and still count.
Right. So you can use, of course, with psychology, you've got a long path. If you want to be a social worker, you've got to get a master's.
Yeah, there's a long way to go.
Master's. But I mean, if you have 2 below, you're, behind you, and then you get another 4. However, adult education's different if you went to a special program. I mean, I don't know. Are you in with the rest of the population? I mean, are the students younger mostly?
Oh, yeah. I mean, other than the teacher, I'm definitely the oldest one there.
Yeah, right.
I mean, that's almost the bigger difference than
Right.
being transgender. I mean,
I was gonna say the age, like you're, I don't know, 48 is that still baby boomer? No, what is it?
no, I'd be Gen X.
So you're going to school. You've got I think you said to me you had a business too that you ran out of the house with your wife that kind of took off, like internet type business.
I own a group of classified job advertising websites. I've done that for about 10 years, but internet marketing in whole about 18, maybe 17 years.
Great. That's worked out, and your wife has done that too, right?
Well, she's not really involved in the business. She quit her job about
She's got 3 kids.
10 years ago.
Right.
Well, I mean, but in the house, I mean,
You work out of your house, right?
Yeah, I work out of the house, but I do a lot of the house stuff. All through our marriage, I do most of the cooking and the shopping and the laundry, and I've just kind of always done that stuff. I don't know. And she does stuff too. It's not like that those are all my roles, but because we've never thought of me as like the wife or anything like that. I guess just ever since we got married, I just kind of jumped into those roles.
Right.
That's kind of how I grew up. But
it's kind of whoever is willing to do it and who likes to do it, or doesn't mind doing it. I guess I don't know if anyone really likes cleaning, but
yeah, nobody likes that stuff.
Yeah, no, you don't really like it, but it's got to get done. So.
I do like cooking though. So there is that. But
well, that's a nice hobby, I think, for people. So tell me about your wife. I mean, how did you two meet? What was your kind of how would you describe her as because it sounds like you're really a good pair. And I always like to give people like this feeling, the people that listen to my show that are struggling in relationships, in any kind of gender differential type of life. Some hope that maybe in the end it really has to do with like being with the right person.
Yeah.
And knowing still how to share in a relationship. So how would you say about your wife?
We were introduced by a friend that we have a church we were going to at the time. And it was a total blind date. He gave me her number, and I'd just broken up with someone else a few months before that. And he's like, here, give this girl a call, and call her at work, actually, and tell her, that I told you to. I'm like, okay. So I called her at work thinking this is crazy, and she thought it was crazy too, that I was calling her at work. But when I mentioned his name, I guess she really trusted him. So it was like, oh, okay, great. So we started talking, and we hit it off on the phone, and we didn't actually go out for a month after we met on the phone because she was kind of busy. So we eventually went out and totally hit it off. And
had you seen pictures of each other? Or?
No, we hadn't met.
Just by.
And I mean, honestly, he told me that she was really attractive, and so I just kind of took his word for it. Mm-hmm. So I'm like, okay. And we were married probably not even 2 years later.
2 years later.
Yeah.
And now, she's from here, right? From this country? Or
she's from Nicaragua.
That's what I
So
thought.
she moved here about 14 or 15.
Okay. So, but, fluid in English and,
Yeah.
and probably, whatever, citizen or, whatever. Or
yeah, she's a citizen, naturalized
in here. So, so, you hit it off, you got like what was, so you went out, you did, you dated, you were together. Mm-hmm. Then you had your children, pretty traditional type of thing. And did you want a larger family like what you have now? Or was this just something that just happened?
No, we did. I mean, we definitely wanted children. I mean, our first son was born, I wouldn't say right away, but after a couple of years. And we had another one, but he was born really prematurely and died.
I'm sorry.
It was really hard. Really about 5 months. He was born about 5 months into the pregnancy and died in about an hour.
I'm sorry.
So we were really afraid to have children after that. And so there's a huge gap between the oldest and the next two.
That explains why you have the 7 years in between,
yeah.
Right.
So eventually she got pregnant again, as nature kind of tends to have it. And but she was on bed rest for 8 months, each baby.
Not an easy pregnancy.
Oh, yeah, really hard. So we had 2 right away. And
yes. And you're lucky to have what you have.
Oh, yeah, and by that time we were both well into our 40s.
Right.
By the time when they came around, and
So how do you? It's your kids are, like you said, they're one's in high school and then 2 are in younger, 10 and 7, or what did you say, 10 and 5?
10 and 8.
8. So they're both in that age period. In your life with your family. It sounds like it's a priority because you both worked hard to have these children. So, you said, do you think part of not having at this point a need to totally be your femme self? Do you think again because you have kids and a family and this is kind of like the path you picked? A wife and kids. I mean, because we're multi. Faceted, people, right? I mean, we just don't have, unless it's just a dry. What I try to get through in the show, what I'm getting to, is that I think people want to think, because Hollywood has presented this, it's like, oh my God, I've got to be that woman or I've got to be that man.
Oh, yeah.
And when I was 3, and I know some people looked in the mirror and they saw the opposite gender, but there's so much in life that you build and that is important, that's part of you. That you've built things in your life that you're proud of, right? Like you're proud of your relationship, you're proud of your kids. So, it's like, do you just deconstruct all of that to become something that you think that you've missed out on in your life? Like being the other part of you? Or is,
Well, I mean, I think that for me, it's been a lot about baby steps and going at a pace that my wife particularly that she's able to handle. I mean, I think in the beginning of our marriage, she would not have been able to handle this. No way.
That's 20 years ago. If you went,
and she's told me straight out, honestly, if I would have known this about you, I probably wouldn't have married you.
Oh, she did say that.
And I'm like,
how did you tell her? Because, my ex, I don't know if I've shared this with you, but my ex-husband never defined he was a cross-dresser or this is the 80s. So that's all we had was cross-dresser, transvestite. And transsexual. We didn't even have transgender really back.
Yeah.
So, but we didn't talk about it. It just one Halloween, he said, hey, one time I went out dressed as a woman and it was a lot of fun, and we're drinking vodka martinis, and he goes and dresses up, and then I dress, and I'm like, okay. By the time he's dressed, I had so many vodka martinis I couldn't see straight, and it's like, and then we were both dressed, and I woke up, and we were both in women's clothing.
What happened last night?
Exactly. I mean, drunk with a hangover in front of the fireplace with us both wearing skirts and stilettos. So I was like, okay then. Well, I'm not sure, but I remember looking over, waking up, thinking, oh my goodness, bra, and where did he get that? And,
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so he had it from his ex-wife, but I thought, well, she left it here. But I just remember looking at it, and he seemed like he liked it a little too much. So it was like, oh my God. So what I guess I'm getting to is then he wanted to do it again and again and again. Is what... how did you come out to your wife the first time? Because that's really something because he never discussed it with me either, and he was
No, I mean, it's not like during our marriage I'd been cross-dressing a lot. I mean, I had a pretty big feminine side that I just kind of openly indulged in. I was into lots of feminine things.
So
but
like
I was just
bracelets or the way you dressed, or I mean, what do you say feminine things?
More things like I did all the cooking. When my son was born, I stayed home, and my wife went back to work. Going and visiting gardens and things like that, decorating our house. I've never just turned it over to her. I've always wanted to be involved.
But subtle.
Going to the ballet. I mean, just all kinds of stuff that was just, and having like no male interests. I mean, not no, maybe just a little bit, not much. So I don't know. I mean,
but she wouldn't have necessarily known because you didn't say to her either, like my ex didn't say to me, hey,
yeah,
I've
definitely in my head. There was definitely the thoughts there, but there was times when I'd put on her clothes because we're pretty close in size, and I just didn't like how I looked in them, Terry. I looked like a man to me, and I knew there was ways of dressing up and looking like a woman, but I didn't really know, and so I just kind of always put it in the back of my head, and sometimes when she was gone, because for a lot of the time I was home working, but she had a job. So it kind of just left me home a lot by myself, and I would sometimes put on her clothes, but not a lot, because it's not like I could go out in them. I still looked like a man.
And there's
in
probably
clothes.
still kind of a violation of that, of what I mean, someone else's clothes. I mean, I don't know, but
so I mean, eventually, I had, I don't know, kind of a massive like a health scare that turned out to be absolutely nothing, but it was all in my head, and it triggered enormous anxiety, sleepless nights. Cold sweats. I couldn't sit still. I stopped eating. I lost like 10 pounds, which is a lot for me because I'm only like a size 8, so that was a lot. And we call that my episode now. But after that, even when I learned that nothing was wrong, I just couldn't get past it.
Was it depression? Do you think, or was it
It was anxiety. What it was is I started doing lots of soul searching of what's wrong. Like, why am I so afraid of dying? Like, just terrified even. And I just, from kind of my religious background, I had this fear, like I'm going to go to hell.
Wow. Were you Catholic?
No, just an evangelical Christian. And nobody ever taught me that. Everybody would have said that's not true.
Right.
Anybody at any church I would have said that's not true.
Right, right.
They never taught me that, but it just was in my own head. And because it's one thing to say to somebody else, "Oh no, you're fine. God loves you," but then when it's you, it's harder. And
so you're kind of questioning your own relationship with God and
yes.
your life, and where it counted, and were you doing the best you could in your life and living to your higher best use?
I mean,
maybe?
I was, but eventually when I dealt with realizing, okay, I'm not going to go to hell. Nobody's going to hell for gender issues or sexuality issues or anything else. Then it was this aha moment, and I wanted to be the person I'd been suppressing all those years.
I see. So maybe this was a conflict with your femme side that was like saying, if you're in a heavy, I was raised in a Catholic church, and you're damned if you do anything, but truly there was this real conflict of deep-seated conflict of everything that you kind of stood for, that you were kind of trained in the church. Was maybe something that
I guess it was kind of this attitude in me of I was always trying to be the man that I thought that I was supposed to be.
Right.
And so
you had
growing
a
up,
successful life.
I never wondered why I wasn't a girl. I kind of wondered why I wasn't like other boys, why I wasn't more masculine, more male. And I always kind of felt like like I was pretending to be more masculine than I really am. And so when I had the chance to just do it, I just came out to my wife really casually, honestly, Terry. I just told her, sometimes I think about putting on girls' clothes and stuff like that.
What did you say, this over breakfast? Or?
We were just laying in bed talking.
Yeah, okay.
And she said, oh, I don't mind that. And she's like, well, wait a minute. Are you going to transition? Are you planning on becoming a woman? And I was like, no.
How long ago was this?
A couple of years, honestly. Just
Okay,
maybe
that's
two,
what I was going to say, too.
maybe just a
Because
couple
it's a
years
different
ago.
time. In 1983, we didn't have the vocabulary.
Oh, yeah, I didn't know what
You know
transgender was.
I don't think we really knew. We only had lesbian, we had gay. So if he dressed and he wanted to be present as himself, then I was a lesbian. I'm like, no, I'm not a lesbian because I married you because you're hetero.
Yeah.
So it got even more confusing. And I dwell on this because I think this relationship, we all want it all in life. We want love,
Yeah.
we want acceptance, we want success, and back to love again. We want to be loved. And I think so many people within the transgender community and even the cross-dressing community, within any gender identity community that's not the typical norm, people struggle with relationships, and that's why for our audience to know, like you came out a couple of years ago and how she said it. So she said, where's this going, right?
Yeah, I think a lot of wives feel kind of what you've just expressed and hinted on, and that's, well, if you were a woman, then where does that leave me? Am I a lesbian?
Yeah,
now? What's going? Like, wait a minute,
true.
what? And they don't know what they.
And they don't know. They
that.
feel like I said, like they lose their husband. Honestly, they don't know how to relate. Well, I don't say they. There are some people that can. I certainly, let me speak for myself, and I've spoken with a lot of women that are angry or they're confused. And I think mostly it's that, who are you? And I don't think they're questioning necessarily. They know who they are. They know they're not a lesbian. That's a fact because they married, right? They know they're not a lesbian. And if they were bisexual, they would have been probably different too. So they know that they're attracted to a male, whoever you were. But it's amazing when you put on the wig or you put on the clothes and now you're in bed with them and you put on the mannerisms, which is part of really releasing some of your femme side. I know my ex-husband really did morph into his femme side, which is very different than his male side.
Oh yeah, my wife, she definitely sees me as a woman. She doesn't want to kiss me or any of
The
that stuff.
gestures are very different. Yeah, it's very different. So you either turn it into a sexual game, and then that gets even more complicated, or you turn it into, well, then where does this fit in our life? And is this something like more of a hobby where you can go out with the girls? Is this when I love you, but in a healthy relationship, you say I love you, but I love me. And it's not an easy topic. It's an evolving topic, and I think the lack of words and communication, and role models, and and everyone's different. But
I think there's this huge fear in anybody that has a relationship like mine, where there's what you might call a cross-dresser or a part-time trans woman and a cisgendered wife of. On one person is thinking, I hope she doesn't leave me because she's getting tired of being married to a cross-dresser. And then the wife is feeling, I hope he doesn't transition. What am I going to do?
Right.
Where is that going to leave me? And so they both have this fear,
right.
That they eventually kind of learn to deal with.
And it's a real fear, and I don't think anyone has any answers about that. I think I always say the communication is so important, but it's really hard to even communicate if you're not sure yourself what to say. So, it's not like you get a script. This is ever evolving. It is like you said when you were talking about baby steps or whatever. But the minute that you said you had that conversation with your wife, things changed.
Oh, it did. See, when she was open to it, she was like, oh, okay. She kind of gave me the nod. I did not mention like the sleepless nights and when she knew about the sleepless nights, but I didn't mention all of the internal anguish. It was just very casual. And so when she was open, I jumped in with both feet. I started doing research online. How do I do this in Pass?
Right.
And so, and then she started helping me too. She started showing me this, how you do your makeup.
Right.
Some stuff I figured out on my own.
But then the presentation, I can only speak for myself because I was like, oh, well, okay, you're a cool person and you're smart and there's a lot of great things about you. And I'll help you with your makeup and this will be fun or whatever. Or what I noticed myself is then once you're in it and it happens with more frequency, because you used to say, I tested him one night. I was, I thought, my own insecurity. It was like, oh, well, gee, I want to be the woman, not you. So I'm used to being the woman. So he'd come in, and I remember I was dressed like a Marilyn Monroe with a fur, and I had stilettos on. I'm very sexy, kind of little just bikinis and hair fluffed out like, with a Liz Taylor version of Marilyn Monroe. And he came in, he looked at me, and he came in from the office, and he looks at me and says, "You look amazing. I'm going to go upstairs and get dressed." I went, "What?"
Yeah.
So he went up and put on his women's clothes, and we sat there as two women, and
Yeah.
But so all I'm saying is everyone's different. We all have different personalities. It's staying in tune with your partner, and it's kind of, I think it's getting better. I mean, I see more and more as more people, like that's why I'm doing the show is because I felt bad. I mean, so many people that had gone through what I had with it not being defined back in, especially in the mid 80s, were so angry at their ex-husbands and blamed them for everything. And I thought that was just extremely unfair because I think it's much more than that. I mean, it's what your relationship was to begin with, how strong you are as an individual. And, that person is still someone you love. But I was trying to explain, and I have tried to explain to my audience and to throughout the years of what you confirmed is that confirmation on there is a different kind of behavior. You just don't throw the clothes on. It's beyond makeup.
Oh, yeah, but it's not like she's surprised or something to see this side of me. It's not like my male side is so masculine.
Yes, yeah, right.
She was like, where did this come from?
Well, for you, it would not be too much of a stretch
Oh,
because, I can see you're, I mean, I'm sure it's not too much of a stretch for you.
No, it's not.
But so have you, along these lines, have you said, like, has your wife said, do you want to transition?
Oh, yeah, she's never offered, like, do you want to transition?
I don't mean it like that. No.
I mean, we've talked about it a lot, and I've been really frank. I've told her, I could transition and be very happy, but I don't really plan on transitioning. I don't know how my kids would take that. I know how she would take it, and I don't really want to split up or get divorced. I love our marriage. I love her, and I'm happy. I'm not unhappy as a man. I don't feel terrible when I'm a man or any of those things. I just like my feminine side, and I relate to it more strongly. Mm-hmm. But I don't think I'd be happier if I was living as a woman full time, but single and living on my own somewhere.
Right, without that love. Maybe your wife would still be your friend, but your kids would be different. It's like you have a lot at risk in your life that you've built that you love.
Exactly.
And it's like, how important is this? It doesn't mean, so I suppose, like, I call it, kind of cutting your deal. I've heard a lot of different stories of how people do it. And some of it is like, instead of going bowling or golfing, they'll go out with the girls for their boys' night out, but it's girls' night out.
Oh, yeah.
And I think having the online has helped tremendously, and all these groups of in these events, even if it's going to a conference, to allow that, then that satisfies it for some people, because some women can't even stand to see their husband dressed. I mean, they say keep it out of the bedroom.
Oh yeah, I know people whose wives close their eyes when they walk through the house. I'm coming, and then they close their eyes and they walk through.
Right.
That's, I have friends whose wives have maybe seen him once in 30 years.
Right.
I
don't know what that is. I mean, it's part of their psyche of what. It's not ignoring. Well, I guess I don't think it's ignoring it, but it's not being able to confront.
I mean, you know what? But many of those people I know, those trans women, they feel like they have it lucky because they know so many people whose wife have left them.
Right. Well, you bring up a really good point,
and
I
they feel like, wow, I have it good. She's still with me.
Well, I didn't want to roll over this because you're exactly right. What you had said, which I really is a key point. Most of the people that I've known that are trans feminine or gender fluid or cross dressing are really afraid of being alone.
Yeah.
And they don't want to lose their wife, so they'll work within the constraints of their marriage. And the wife is often just scared. She doesn't. I mean, it depends on how open she is in terms of her creativity, where she came from, what she does. A variety of factors to be able to look at her husband now and compartmentalize or look at him as a total person. And then it just depends on how self-absorbed her husband is with his femme role, which I find that's a problem.
The balance is
yeah,
huge.
if it's me, what I've seen a lot is even if you came out as a alien and it was all about how do I look today? What am I doing? How does, and then me without consideration of your of your partner, your wife, then that just becomes you being a self-absorbed person beyond just being a crossdresser. So.
Oh yeah, there was a time when she was like, it seems like even when you're not in femme, that you're still so consumed with being Syndey. It's like, where's my husband?
Right.
And I kind of had to pull back and balance and.
Right.
Because she likes going out with me and she likes me as Syndey and we have a lot of fun as girls, but she's not really married to Syndey. It's kind of, I always say she's kind of married to the guy and friends with the woman. Yeah. It's kind of the dynamic that we have.
Yeah.
And so we can have fun and do a lot of Syndey stuff, but she still wants.
Yeah, she wants her husband.
She still wants her husband.
She really does.
I understand.
And
that.
it's a way that's why she married you. It's just hard at this late in the game to switch it out.
Oh yeah,
I think she's trying. Certainly trying.
If she wanted to marry a woman, it wouldn't have been me. She would have married some woman.
Yeah, I always said if I wanted to marry a woman, I would have married a woman. That's why I'm not a lesbian. So I'm going to have to cut this off. But I want you back if you.
Oh, that'd be great.
I'd love to have you back. You're just, this conversation has been so important to me and I'm sure our audience that allows them to see a different perspective on it because I'm still trying to get the word out on the word crossdresser or part-time, trans, to be able to let them know what it is, So thank you so much. And I want to thank everyone, Syndey, thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
And I want to thank everyone for listening to the show. Again, this is season 2 of Shades of Gender, and I am so pleased to be part of this gender identity movement. And thank you so much for joining us, and we'll see you on the next show.